Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink with a couple more Valentine cards using more of the Lindy's magical shimmer powders, which I just did a video on the other day. I don't know, all my days are running into each other, but I'll have a link to it at the end of this video. Had a lot of requests to show how I do swatches, all of that sort of thing, because I mentioned that in the video as well. It's on the to-do list. I might do a live video for that. Working on it. Again, my to-do list is 5 million miles long, all things. Anyway, I wanted to use some of the powders again and just was messing around and experimenting. So the first thing I did is I took a couple of these pieces of, this is Canson watercolor paper, and I'm just taping them down to like a hardboard. This is like a cutting board, just something to hold them flat. Because when you add a ton of water, things curl up, which I don't mind. It flattens as it dries. However, when they curl up, things run off the edge. Now, with these shimmer powders, they do behave in the exact same way as the Tonic Nouveau shimmer powders that I've done a ton of videos on. I will have a link to that playlist at the end of this video. And I'm going to be adding these videos to that playlist because they work the same. Really, the only difference is the containers they come in, and the Lindy's ones do have tons more colors, which just makes me happy. So right now I'm using them in my least favorite way to use shimmer powders. And these are just flat backgrounds. Personally, I don't like using shimmer powders this way. I think because there's so much less control, if that makes sense. I like having like a heat embossed background or a heat embossed image. It just works better for me. I'm happier than that, that way. But making backgrounds, it's also a good way to get out of the creative box and yes, relinquish some control. So I'm taking colors from the Drop Dead Diva set. There's these 3 colors that were just gorgeous. So I sprinkled those onto these backgrounds just using my fan brush. And same as the other shimmer powders, less is more. You don't need much. You notice when you start adding water and the colors just start to goo everywhere. So I could have left it just like here. But I wanted my backgrounds to be more vibrant, so I'm going to add more powder. Another thing to note is I do add a lot of water to these. You can kind of leave it as is, and you'll see areas that are kind of granular, like the powders haven't fully absorbed the water, reacted, things like that. And I love the look of that. However, because these are very, very pigmented shimmer powders, I don't like doing that because it doesn't take much for those little, unactivated powders to transfer to everything else. And it just makes a mess and it bugs me. You technically could try sealing it. I don't, and I've said this a million times and I'll keep saying it. I do not mess around with sealing my backgrounds, whether it's a spray sealant or microglaze, things like that. I almost never use it. Depending on certain techniques, I will. But with shimmer powders, things like that, I'm not going to bother sealing it. I ain't got time for that. I just don't want to. So for me, I like to make sure that all the powders have been mixed in with the water. That's why I'm spraying so much water. I was mucking around with the brush. All the things. Just playing with it, having fun. I'm going to let it all completely dry, which is what I did. Because that's always the biggest thing too, is just walk away from it. Let it just, let it dry. And then I went through my entire stash. I had this specific idea in my head and I wanted kind of a magenta to go with the backgrounds, like glitter type paste. And shockingly, I didn't have that. Actually, the one I did, it was dried out. So anyway, I decided to put my little chemistry / creative hat on it, and I was going to start mixing things. So I have this jar, which you can see here. This is a container of sparkle paper glitz from Picket Studios. I showed this in one of my Christmas videos. The consistency of this is not normal. When the package had arrived, everything had frozen completely solid. I'm still not sure if it was because of the freezing or if this might have been this is just kind of a one-off. Their pastes are not supposed to be this liquidy, but I didn't want to get rid of this one. It has got the most beautiful, mica shimmer, and that's what I'm stirring up right now because it's very liquidy. It has beautiful shimmer to it. A person could technically like leave it open for a while, like leave it exposed to air and kind of let it dry out a bit. I don't have the time for that, but I didn't want to get rid of it. And then I have this jar. This is a jar of Gina K Glitz glitter gel that I also showed in a recent video. This is old. This container, it's got the press and seal on it, but like this is probably a couple years old. It's very, very thick. And I've mentioned in other videos, you can add a bit of distilled water. You can also use Ranger's ink refresher spray because it has resins in it. You can try that to kind of reactivate and thin out pastes that are getting too thick. Either one can kind of work because especially if they're already starting to go, bad or dry out, why not try rescuing them? So those are options. What I decided to do is mix these two together. One is too thin, one is too thick. So I'm going to get it to a consistency that works. Plus it adds the two different kinds of shimmers together. So I'm just mixing them together on my little palette. And this just kind of made me laugh because back in the day when I was, well, I still am, a registered esthetician, I used to own a salon and do nails and nail art. Those were the days. Any of my former clients could attest to this. This is what I did all the time. I had a little tile and I would be mixing gels and glitters and colors, and I could do all the things. Like I could match any special occasion outfit, all those fun things. So that's what I was doing here. I mix these two together to get it to a thinner consistency, and they're all shimmery, but I want that like color. So I'm going to add some of the Lindy's magical powders. And this one I was using this is Prima Donna Purple. Beautiful. Again, use less than you think because you can see I didn't sprinkle much powder on here, and like color, so much color. This was fun. The other thing I'm going to note though, when adding, whether it's like a shimmer powder like this or a water-based dye ink, anything like that, if you're adding it to a paste, you can add it to the paste. That's fine. It's totally fine. Don't be surprised though, sometimes if you are applying this paste over stencil on plain cardstock, like say plain white cardstock or plain watercolor paper that you haven't added anything else to, there is a chance that as the paste dries, that color can kind of leach out into the cardstock. I'm just going to mention that. I didn't have any problems with this, but I'm applying this over those backgrounds that already have something on them. So that's why I haven't really shown this very often, because there's so many other little factors. But again, it's fun to experiment. I'm mixing up quite a lot here, but if you're not sure about something, like mix up just a little small amount, of a glitter paste with some powder or whatever it is you're wanting to mix, and then test it out on a small piece of cardstock and just see what happens. See how it dries, see how it looks. You never know. You might find something really awesome. And if you end up mixing up too much, I actually mix up just about the right amount. Some of it's dumb luck, but also, again, I've been doing this for years. I used to do this with the nails, all the things, and I just have a weird... It's like my one random, almost useless little superpower is being able to mix up products more often than not in the right amounts. So anyway, you could though also put it in a container. Like if you've got more than you need, put it in a little container, make sure it's sealed up real well. It could last for, I have no idea how long, but I ended up mixing a little more powder into this. On camera, the colors do look muted. People have been noticing that because I've got a new filming camera. I started using it a month or two ago. I don't even remember when. It's been a couple months. Anyway, the colors are more muted in the video. The photos are much more accurate. Like this is vibrant. It made me so happy. So I applied this custom Franken mixture over this stencil from Simon Says M. This is the XL Snowflake stencil. This is the one I used the other day with just the Gina K Glitz iridescent glitter gel. So this time now I've mixed it with the Picket Fence paper glitz and the Lindy's magical powders, and I've got this just punch you in the face magenta-ish glitter mixture. And when it dries, on the second one it smeared a bit. I didn't care. I was like, this is beautiful. I don't care. So after I was done my stenciling, I set everything aside. I washed my stencil immediately because glitter paste, if you've ever worked with it, wash your stencils or put them in a tray of water, just something. Like, do not let it dry on your stencils. It is not fun to try and remove. It pretty much dries like cement on your stencils. So I cleaned everything off, and while that was all drying, I decided to do hot foiling too, because why not? You know, I'm just like mucking around with shimmer backgrounds and mixing my own paste, and then I was like, let's add hot foiling. So that's what I did. Turned on my Glimmer hot foil machine, and I have the Love 2 Ways hot foil plate set from Simon, and you can see the other one, it just has two different orientations of the word. I chose the one that's like kind of in a square because I was planning on die cutting this. And what I've been finding, and I've been showing this in recent videos that works really well for me, is taping down the foil and the plate. It keeps the foil from curling up, because again, if you've worked with the hot foil plates, everything, the foil is very, very thin. It likes to just, you know, immediately curl up, especially once it touches a hot plate. So I've been finding if I tape it first, I get such better results. Plus, by taping everything down, it doesn't shift when I'm putting it through the die cut machine. So I had my Glimmer hot foil system. I had heated it up. I used some bright pink Glimmer hot foil and the plate, and just the thin Spellbinders tape, and with everything. I will have links directly below the video. And then I was using scraps of Simon's Audrey Blue cardstock. And that's another thing I've just been experimenting with, because generally, like the white Hammermill cardstock, glossy cardstocks, Spellbinders also has their own specialty white cardstock. Those, you know, foil like a dream. But I like to foil on other colors too. And some cardstocks can be a hit and a miss. You know, some foil great, some not so great. It just depends. So this was another kind of test, because like, let's just see what happens. And it worked perfectly both times. And this was a good crafting session, you know, when things were just working. Even, you know, the backgrounds I was like, not sure about, but, you know, the paste mixed up really well and looked fabulous. The foiling worked. It's like, you know, when things just work and you just feel like accomplished and successful. And then I leave my office and I like knock over an entire massive mason jar of, you know, ice in the water. Well, thankfully it was ice and water and not something like sticky and gross, but, you know, doofy things like that, because I am a klutz by nature. But oh yeah, and before I actually started filming this, I knocked my coffee cup like all over. Like I knocked coffee all over. Like I had to wipe down packaging. I'm not getting into that. Anyway, my backgrounds are dry. I removed the painter's tape, and I don't know, these colors just make me up. There's something about like the color like purple and magenta and pink and aqua. Yes. So these are all dry. I trimmed these backgrounds down to, it was just slightly smaller than like 4 5 1/4 inches. Like I've been saying this, my kind of go-to size lately for a lot of my card front panels is 3 3/4 by 5 inches. This was slightly bigger than that because I didn't want to cut these down too much, because they're just fabulous. And at the end, I will show with my flashlight like the shimmer and the sparkle. Oh, love. So got my backgrounds with the big snowflake. I die cut the hot foil sentiments with just a circle wafer die. And then I went through my stash and I also pulled out, this came out a year or two ago, I forget. This is the Dainty Snowflake from Simon. And I die cut that from white cardstock. And I didn't bother popping out like the center areas also pop out. Like it is a very just dainty, gorgeous little snowflake. I didn't bother popping those pieces out because they're going to be covered up by the sentiment. And plus it gives me a little extra adhering space, you know, so I don't have to get too finicky. So I die cut those from white cardstock, and then I adhered them to the center of each of these stenciled snowflakes. So then once I've got those popped into place, I'm going to let that adhesive dry completely. And then once that adhesive is dry, I'll start adhering like everything else. So with the die cut hot foiled love circle, I wanted to add to that. So I pulled out some sentiment strips. And I can't remember if I've shown these in videos or not. I store all of my sentiment strip packs in these little pockets and boxes from Simon. They're the Positively Everything storage boxes and Positively Everything pockets. I'm just trying to like Positively Everything clear pockets. Again, I'll have links to everything. And yeah, I'm slowly going through them all and like also labeling all the pockets because Simon has released dozens upon dozens of these sentiments over the last several years. And my plan is to have like each box will be love sentiments, thank you sentiments. You know what I mean? Like keep them organized by theme. So that's what I was doing. So I pulled out these CZ Design Reverse Love sentiment strips and I trimmed down the ones I wanted to use, and I trimmed off the wording on the ones I'm going to use on the front because it said the strip says I love you so very much. So I cut off I love because I'm going to use that hot foil sentiment. So it'll say love you so very much. And then I trimmed down a couple more to go on the insides of the cards. So just using my guillotine trimmer and eyeballing it. And once I've got all of my sentiments cut out, get rid of the little tiny scraps, but all the leftover little words and everything from that I'd like trimmed off, I kept those. I just stick them back in the pocket because you never know what, next time I go to use this pack, because more often than not, I'm like pairing them with like little die cut sentiments or stamp sentiments, things like that. So you never know when some of those little words might come in handy. So I just stick them back in the pocket, stick it in the little box, good to go. So on the insides of my cards, I'm going to use the stencil again that I had cleaned off. And I just taped it into place with a little piece of Post-it tape. And then I used Simon's Seafoam Positively Saturated ink. Just a nice light aqua. I wanted to use like a deep magenta color because I was like, ooh, that'd look fabulous. But I try not to go too intense on the insides of my cards because I want to be able to write over it. So I compromised and used a seafoam because it's a beautiful color too. So stenciled that on the inside of both cards. And then I used the sentiment strips that I had trimmed down. So the inside says, sending you hugs and kisses. And I've mentioned this before. When it comes to Valentine cards specifically, for my Valentine series and just what I generally make, I don't make a ton of Valentine cards because I'm only going to use like one very specific, like, I love you card for one specific person, or maybe more for my kids, but they'll usually be kid themed ones. So I like to keep mine a little more like just to say, hey, love ya, love you, thanks. Those sorts of like a little more generic. So a card like this is something I would send to like a friend or just, anyone really, because it just says love you so very much. Sending you hugs and kisses. You know what I mean? So I adhered the card front panels to the base with craft tacky glue, had stuck them under my Misty and actually stuck like my die cut machine on top of that just to hold everything down so that the adhesive could dry. And then my hot foiled sentiments, I adhered on top of those snowflakes with some thin foam squares. And then the little sentiment strips, I used the thicker foam squares and I just cut those in half to fit across these like little narrow sentiment strips. And then pop those into place. So the fronts of the card says, love you so very much. And then of course I'm going to add just a little bit of bling just to tie in the sea glass colors. So these are actually sea glass embellishments from Trinity Stamps. My current obsession. They're just pretty. So picked a few of those out, got them in place. And then I'm just going to adhere those into place with craft tacky glue and my little embellishment wand. And then I'm going to pair these cards with some metallic sea glass envelopes from Simon. And that's going to finish off these cards. So I'm going to turn the flashlight on my phone so you guys can really see the shimmer. You can see it right now, but like when the flashlight's on, you can really see the sparkle and the shimmer. I've got, the shimmery background, the sparkle paste, the hot foil sentiment. Like these were fun. They just appeal to my inner magpie so very much. And the colors are just, they're delicious. I love it. So, like I mentioned earlier, I will have links below the video. As always, I will link to my blog post. In my blog post, I always have picture links to everything. I'll have the supply list. I'll link to all of that. That will be in the description box below the video. And then at the end of this video, I will link to my shimmer powder playlist because I have got, I think, a good couple dozen, if not more, videos I've done over the years using shimmer powders, and I always keep adding them to the playlist. And I will also link to my current Valentine 2023 playlist that I will continue to add to. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch my videos. Thumbs up, comment, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye!